We want to welcome you to this session of the Religion and Science program of Global Ministries University and the Institute of Science and Religion in Kochi, India, led by Father Augustine Pamplany. We welcome Father Matthew Fox, one of the great scholars in the history of science and religion, and particularly in the field of creation theology and cosmology. His book, Original Blessing, I'm going to let Dennis Edwards say a little bit about his bio. His book, Original Blessing, really founded the field of creation theology. And I'll let Dennis take over with the bio for Father Fox. Dennis?
Okay. Reverend Matthew Fox, PhD author, theologian, and activist priest, has been calling people of spirit and conscience into the creation spirit, spirituality lineage for over 50 years. His 44 books and his lectures, retreats, and innovative education models have ignited an international movement to awaken people to be mystics, prophets, and contemplative activists who honor and defend the earth and work for justice. He has contributed to the rediscovery of Hildegard of Bingen, Meister Eckhart, and Thomas Aquinas as pre-modern mystics and prophets. Fox holds a doctorate in the history and theology of spirituality from the Institut Catholique de Paris. The founder of the University of Creation Spirituality in California, he conducts dozens of workshops each year and is a visiting scholar at the Academy for the Love of Learning.
Thank you, Dennis. We'll turn it over to Reverend Fox for his lecture. And those, if you want to post questions, you can do it in the chat box, and we'll take those questions at the end of his lecture. Thank you, Reverend Fox, for joining us.
Thank you, Gerald, and thank you, Father Augustine. I'm very pleased to be with you all today, and I've been very excited about the GMU University ever since I heard about it. And so I'm happy to contribute a little bit today on this important topic of creation spirituality and science and religion and theology. I've been very blessed because I worked with a lot of scientists. I live here in the Bay Area, near San Francisco, and I've been here, about 40 years. And previously I was teaching and living in Chicago, and one of my faculty was Brian Swim, who's a cosmologist. He and I moved our program from Chicago here to Oakland, California. And one reason we did that was he convinced me. He said the dialogue between science and mysticism is not happening in Chicago, it's happening in the Bay Area. And that's true. There are a lot of scientists here who are very interested in spirituality. And so I've been very blessed to work with many of them. Brian is one of them. And his mentor, one of his mentors and mine, is Thomas Berry, who died a few years ago, but was a very important link between science and the ecological movement. His book, The Great Work, for example, and Dream of the Earth, and other of his books, all of these were very important and still are. And I was blessed to be a friend to him and to sit at his feet on many occasions when he would come and lecture at my school. So, obviously, when we're talking about humanity today, we're talking about our Mother Earth. And we're talking about her suffering, which is, as Pope Francis pointed out, comparable to the suffering of the poor today. That Mother Earth is being treated the way the poorest are being treated and have been treated over the centuries. And I don't have to dwell on this. We are all aware of it, no matter what continent we are living on. We are experiencing more drought, more floods, stronger hurricanes, wildfires, melting of ice caps, and therefore endangerment of our water. I have a friend who, on his 50th birthday, gave himself a present to go to Africa to climb Mount Kilimanjaro. And when he got to the top, he cried, because even then, and that was, I think, about 10 years ago, he could see the glaciers melting. And of course, what that means for the future of humanity and other species when water becomes more and more sparse. So from Antarctica to the North Pole, we are all, no matter what our religions, what our nationalities, what our ethnicities, what our politics, we are all being affected by climate change. And of course, we have to ask, where is religion in all this? What is it contributing? And what can science contribute? And of course, we have to name the fact that there are many people in denial, and especially forces, powerful forces, that are making money still on fossil fuels and pretending with their head in the sand that we are not in a crisis as a species, and not just us, but hundreds of millions of other species, all of which are being affected by climate change. And so this is a great moment of possibility of humanity waking up to the depths of its spiritual traditions, whatever they be, and the depths of our intelligence and creativity as scientists and as citizens. So this crisis can bring us together. Every crisis contains its possibilities, its invitation to grow, to expand. And that's what we're living in, is a moment when humanity, for its own survival, has to move into a greater awareness of the sacredness of creation. And this is religion's job, when it's doing its job and doing it well, is to recover a sense of the sacred. I had a dream about 25 years ago, and it was a very important dream. And it said to me, there's nothing wrong with the human species today except one thing. Now let's just pause there. That's a shock in itself. We only have one problem. Seems to me we could sit down and I could ask you what's wrong with us, and we could come up with hundreds of things. One thing is wrong with us, said this dream. You have forgotten the sense of the sacred. That was the dream. That is a dream, the kind of which Native Americans call a big dream, meaning a dream for the community, not just for me as an individual. And of course, all dreams come to heal us. So this was a trumpet call to our species. How do we recover a sense of the sacred when we've lost it? Well, Thomas Berry says that we recover a sense of the sacred when we've lost it, when we recover a sense of the universe as the primary sacred reality. And that is the exciting and powerful moment that we are in as a species today. All this suffering, along with all the beauty that our ancestors have received from Mother Earth and that we have received, we know that because we're here. We've come this far as a species. All this beauty and all this suffering is an avenue to, and a motivation to recover a sense of the sacred. So I'd like to begin by just looking briefly, but not superficially, at the traditions, the religious traditions of the world. Obviously, we can't touch on all of them. But in my book, One River, Many Wells, I talk about all the religions of the world, what they have in common, what they're teaching in common. And I point out 18 different themes that they all celebrate. Themes like meditation and light and compassion and joy and what happens after death and so forth. But one of the themes is, of course, creation itself. And that's where I want to draw from this to share with you just a few of the teachings from various traditions, because I know we represent various traditions here in this class. So here's a teaching from Dostoevsky, Russian Orthodox, from his book Brothers Karamazov. He writes, "Love all creation, the whole, WHOLE, and every grain of sand in it. Love every leaf and every ray of light. Love the plants, love the animals, love everything. If you love everything, you will perceive the divine mystery in all things. Once you perceive it, you will comprehend it better every day. And you will come, at last, to love the whole world with an all-embracing love." So that is one teaching from the Russian Orthodox tradition and Dostoevsky. In the Hebrew Bible, we read, the oldest creation story is found in Psalm 104, so I recommend checking that out. "Yahweh, what variety you have created, arranging everything so wisely. Earth is completely full of things you have made, among the vast expanse of ocean, teeming with countless creatures, creatures large and small, with the ships going to and fro." And from the Book of Wisdom, part of the wisdom literature, "Simply I learned about wisdom, the design of the universe." Notice the cosmology here. The design of the universe, the force of its elements, beginning and end of time, changes in the sun's course, varieties of seasons, cycles of years, positions of stars, natures of animals, tempers of beasts, powers of winds, thoughts of humanity. Notice how late the thoughts of humanity come. All these other things bring us along, bring us into existence, and inspire our thoughts. Uses of plants, virtues of roots, such things as are hidden I learn, for wisdom, the artisan of all, taught me. So wisdom is another name for the divine, and wisdom is a feminine name, both in Hebrew, Chokhmah, and in Greek, Sophia. The biblical tradition, much of which is written in Greek. So wisdom, who plays with God before the creation of the world, according to the book of Proverbs, is implicit in all this going on in the universe, the seasons, the animals, the plants, all of it. And of course, Psalm 19, "The heavens declare the glory of God. The vault of heaven proclaims God's handiwork." An ancient rabbinic teaching says creation is the extension of God. Creation is God encountered in time and space. Creation is the infinite in the garb of the finite. To attend to creation is to attend to God. And in the book of Daniel, we have this beautiful prayer. All things the Lord has made, bless the Lord. Heavens, bless the Lord. Waters above the heavens, bless the Lord. Sun and moon, bless the Lord. Stars of heaven, bless the Lord. Showers and dews, all bless the Lord. Winds, bless the Lord. Fire and heat, bless the Lord. Frost and cold, bless the Lord, etc., etc. Animals, wild and tame, all bless the Lord. So, of course, there is this tremendous emphasis on the sacredness of creation, worthy of our thanks and of our praise and of our blessing. But also, I encourage people to go back to Genesis 1, the very first page of the Jewish Bible and the Christian Bible. Genesis 1. In the beginning, God made the world. And we're told it is good. All the parts are good. The sun is good. The moon is good. The dark is good. The light is good. And at the very end of this cosmology, and that's what Genesis 1 is, it's a cosmology. It is a story of the creation of the universe. At the very end, humans join. And, that parallels today's science. We're latecomers to all this, folks. We're very late. 13.8 billion years late. Here we are. But when humans showed up, the whole circle of creation in Genesis 1 is called very good. So it's good, everything is good, and even when humans come with all our capacity for evil, it's very good. That's the first page of the Bible. It doesn't mention sin or evil. That comes in chapter 2 and 3. We should meditate more on the goodness of creation. That's what original blessing, which is the name of one of my books that has caught people's attention. That's why, because blessing is a theological word for goodness. Original goodness, original blessing, that is the Jewish tradition and the Christian tradition and the Muslim tradition of creation and its sacredness among us. And let me turn to the Quran. We read, O mankind, worship your Lord who has created you and created those who were before you, that you may be shielded against all ill, who has spread out the earth like a bed for you, and has made the heaven like a canopy, and has caused water to come down from the clouds, and has therewith brought forth provision for you in the shape of fruits. So again, a celebration of the beauty and the glory in the intention of the Creator. Another passage from the Quran, in the creation of the heavens and the earth, and the alternation of the night and the day, and in the vessels that sail in the sea, carrying that which profits people, and in the water that Allah sends down from the clouds and quickens therewith the earth after its death, and scatters therein all kinds of beasts, and in the course of the winds and the clouds pressed into service between the heaven and the earth, are indeed signs for a people who understand. And the medieval philosopher and Sufi master Ibn al-Arabi writes, in every abode of being and becoming, the unique, the merciful has forms, whether hidden or manifest. His determination applies in every abode equally. Indeed, he is ever unfolding his reality to creation. So creation is always going on, it's continuous creation. And in the Christian tradition, we have so much affirmation too of the sacredness of creation. Thomas Aquinas, 13th century theologian, takes a line from the Psalm that says they should be drunk with the plenty of thy house. That's the Psalm. And Aquinas says that is the universe. We're here to get drunk on God's house, which is the universe. The invitation to ecstasy, to a spiritual experience when we encounter the universe. It says God's work whereby God brings things into being must not be taken as the work of a craftsman who makes a box and then walks away. God continues to give being. God indeed works until now, It's a quote from John's Gospel, by preserving and providing for the creatures God has made. The ultimate end of the divine will is the divine goodness. And the nearest thing to that among created things is the good of the whole universe. Thus, among created things, what God cares for most is the order of the universe. Well, this kind of teaching invites in today's science, which is telling us so much about the universe and bringing it to us in pictures from Webb telescope, for example, which was created by scientists from 29 different countries. And of all religions, the scientists who created that amazing instrument, Webb telescope, a million miles from Earth, bringing in daily news of the universe and pictures. And also this recent telescope just unveiled in Peru, bringing in pictures on a daily basis. So we humans today, at the very time that we're facing extinction, our own and that of so many other species, are being gifted with a big shot in the arm of amazement and awe and wonder, which should trigger gratitude and reverence. And all that is what the mystics call the via positiva, the experience of the doxa, the glory of God present in creation. And science has a tremendous role to play today in awakening this awe in us. Rabbi Heschel says, awe is the beginning of wisdom. We have to move as a species from knowledge to wisdom. And wisdom, like I was just citing a passage from the book of wisdom, the wisdom is about the whole. And wisdom is about the heart, about embracing the whole with care, with knowledge, but more than knowledge, with care and caring, with love, with the whole of our being, with all of our chakras. Hildegard of Bingen, a great 12th century saint in the Christian tradition, says, creation is allowed in intimate love to speak to the Creator as if to a lover. So she compares creation and Creator to husband and wife, to lovers. God's word is in all creation, visible and invisible, she says. The word is living, being, spirit, all verdant greening, all creativity. This word manifests in every creature. Every creature contains the word of God. Meister Eckhart said, every creature is a word of God and a book about God. He said, if I spent enough time with a caterpillar, I would never have to prepare a sermon because one caterpillar is so full of God. So it's the attention we give creation and the love that gathers us up into this sacred liturgy, the sacred process that is the universe. And let me just share with you one teaching from Thich Nhat Hanh and the Buddhist tradition. He says, when we look into the heart of a flower, we see clouds, sunshine, minerals, time, the earth, and everything else in the cosmos in it. Without clouds, there could be no rain, there would be no flower. Without time, the flower could not bloom. In fact, the flower is made entirely of non-flower elements. It has no independent individual existence. Now, this is true of all of us. We too are part of this interconnected web, what Hildegard of Bingen called the web of creation. And now we know, thanks to science, that this has been going on for 13.8 billion years. And it has brought us here, it brought our Earth here. It brought our sun here. It brought the moon and the tides here. It made our lives possible, and all the lives of these amazing creatures we share this planet with, from giraffe to elephants to whales to hummingbirds to rainforests, with soil, all of it is a gift of 13.8 billion years. Are we responding to it as a gift? Or are we trying to rape it? Because that is the place that Mother Earth finds her in today. Mother Earth is declining because of humanity's greed. And this is another role that religion has to play, to warn us once again of our shadow side, of our capacity for evil, for violence, for not caring, for selfishness, for greed, especially when greed gets structured into our economic systems. The indigenous people, the Lakota people in America pray all our relations, one of their most sacred prayers, Ahomatakiasi, all our relations, whenever they pray. That's cosmology. That's bringing cosmology to the heart, to the individual. All our relations. We are related to the whole universe. The breath we breathe in languages all over the world, many African languages, the biblical languages, breath and spirit are the same words. How interdependent we are. Now, this is another lesson that comes both from spirituality and religions, but from today's science is kind of rediscovering it, you might say, or discovering it themselves. Because for centuries, science was teaching us wrongly that individualism, the rugged individual atom, was what made up matter. And that's not true. We're finding, in fact, that it's interdependence and processes that make things what they are and make us who we are. And that is such an important finding from science today, because it corresponds exactly with the teachings of spiritual teachers everywhere, that compassion is our most divine capacity. Compassion. And compassion is based on interdependence. Meister Eckhart, the great 14th century Christian mystic, said, "What happens to another, whether it be a joy or a sorrow, happens to me." That's interdependence. That's compassion. It is out of that awareness of interdependence, shared joy and shared suffering, that our compassion flows. Thomas Merton, a great Christian monk who died in Thailand, 3 hours before he died, he gave a talk. And in it, he said, compassion is a keen awareness of the interdependence of all living things, which are all part of one another and involved in one another. Now, this is profound spiritual teaching. It's found as everywhere in all religious traditions, such as Thich Nhat Hanh's story about the flower. And in Jesus saying, "Be you compassionate as your Creator in heaven is compassionate," in Luke 6. The Dalai Lama, who says, we can do away with all religion, but we can't do away with compassion. Compassion is my religion. Well, compassion is at the heart of all religions. Indeed, in the Quran, compassion is by far the most common adjective applied to Allah. Allah, the compassionate one, the merciful. And in Judaism, compassion is the secret name for God. But Jesus let the secret out of the bag in Luke 6, that we're all capable of compassion. And now science is on board. We're all capable of interdependence. In fact, that's what runs things in the universe. What a moment for religion and science to get together and for religion to wake up to its essence. Quit going to wars raised by the reptilian brain, by false images of masculinity. Boom, 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 boom. My God's better than your God. My God can beat up your God. Get over it. The world is dying because of humanity's coldness. And not caring, and not tapping in to our capacity for interdependence, therefore for compassion and justice, because justice structures compassion. It creates forms and structures that allow compassion to flow. Now, Pope Francis, in his wonderful encyclical Laudate Si, which is a celebration of creation. And of course, Pope Francis deliberately chose the name Francis after Francis of Assisi, the first pope ever to choose that name. But he did it very deliberately because he was trying to put forward, in a primary way, humanity's responsibility for creation and our love of creation. And I'm very proud to say that encyclical was actually written by a student of mine, a priest, missionary priest from the Philippines, Sean McDonough, who studied in my master's program for a year, got his degree from us in creation spirituality. And he went back to the Philippines and he wrote a number of small books on spirituality and creation. The Pope saw some of them and plucked them and took them to Rome and said, write this. So about 80% of the encyclical is written by a student of creation spirituality, and 15% was written by Leonardo Boff, a friend of mine, who is a liberation theologian in South America. And he especially has stressed in his writings the relationship between Mother Earth's suffering and the suffering of the poor in the South, the global South. And all that comes through in Pope Francis's encyclical. And I'd like to tell you now a little bit more about creation spirituality and how it comes forward in that encyclical. Dennis, I'm going to ask you, or whoever has that little diagram, to share it. Because the creation spirituality names our spiritual journey in 4 paths. The via positiva, so you see that's in the center. This is an open-ended spiral is how I envision our spiritual journeys. The via positiva already alluded to it. It's about praise and joy, experience the deep goodness in life, the ecstasies of life. The via negativa, which comes next, is 2 things. It's our experience of silence and darkness, what is called the apophatic divinity. Meister Eckhart says God is super essential darkness, who has no name and will never be given a name. So the via positiva is about the light we see every day, the light in creation. The via negativa is about the darkness and the mystery and the beauty of the darkness. Of course, we all spent 9 months in the dark before we emerged into this world. And so much happens in the dark that is so powerful, gestation and beauty. Think of the trees and how much of their lives are underground in the dark. Meister Eckhart says the soul, the ground of the soul is dark. So darkness has a sacredness of its own. And you learn that in meditation, where you learn to let go and let be. You let go of thoughts, you let go of busyness, the monkey mind, and you go into darkness that way. That's one way of experiencing the sacred and the divine. The second part of the via negativa is about suffering. Suffering, too, it can be something sacred. Of course, in Christianity, the cross is an archetype of that. And you don't have to be a Christian to understand the meaning of the cross. That all kinds of innocent people are crucified in this world, are treated unjustly. And all that is gathered up in that experience of Jesus and the cross. Then we move from the via positiva. Notice at the top I have a formula. Via positiva plus via negativa yields what? The via creativa. If you put a negative, take an electric cord, you have the negative and the positive energy, put them together, and sparks happen, right? Spark happens. So in the spiritual journey, you take your love of life, the via positiva, and your lessons from letting go and from suffering, the via negativa, bring them together, and you've got creativity. You've got your creativity flowing. So today, I talked about the suffering of Mother Earth that we all know about, plus our love of Mother Earth, bring that together, and maybe, just maybe, we'll have an explosion of creativity. In fact, that is happening. A lot of forces today are trying to heal the ecological damage through imagination. Obviously, solar energy, wind energy, wave energy, all kinds of inventions coming a lot. Then the via creativa leads to the via transformative. Because our creativity can be used for more bombs, more weapons, and of course, crazy that we are, this is exactly what we're doing with it, creating all these new weapons that go faster than the speed of sound and all that stuff. The via transformativa tells us what to use our creativity for compassion and for justice. So those are the four paths of creation spirituality. But notice they're open-ended, because even when we come to the via transformativa, it's open, because then we return to the via positiva again. If we can create compassion and justice and healing, then there'll be more joy in the world, more fairness, more people at the table to imbibe of the beauty of life. Okay, thank you, Dennis. Now, if you look at the Laudate Si encyclical, you will realize it is structured around these four paths. So I'll just share with you a few of Pope Francis's sayings, teachings in that encyclical. For example, around the issue of beauty, which is the via positiva. Says he, nature is a magnificent book in which God speaks to us and grants us a glimpse of his infinite beauty and goodness. That's the via positiva. Again, Francis says, God's plan is for peace, beauty, and fullness. And again, the entire universe holds the mysterious beauty of what is unfolding that we can come to know. And of course, this leads to awe and to wonder. Rabbi Heschel says that awe is the encounter of the universe and the human mind. That is what awe is. It's an encounter with the universe. Our minds are made for something grand. And that's why the gift from science today is a gift of awe. And that is a primal gift. It's the way humans wake up and move from knowledge to wisdom. Awe is the beginning of wisdom. We're not going to survive without wisdom. Knowledge is not going to save us. Thomas Berry puts it this way. He says, everywhere we find ourselves invaded by the world of the sacred. But an absence of a sense of the sacred is a basic flaw in many of our efforts at ecologically or environmentally adjusting our human presence to the natural world. It has been said, we will not save what we do not love. It is also true that we will neither love nor save what we do not experience as sacred. Eventually, only our sense of the sacred will save us. That is religion's task today, to return to the sense of the sacred. But we have the help of science there, because science is so busy bringing awe back. And it is an awe of all God's creation, an awe of the whole universe. Not only is it 13.8 billion years in time, we now know it is 2 trillion galaxies big. Now, this is stunning information. Newton thought, and he was a smart guy, but in his day, he felt the universe was a Milky Way, period. 1 galaxy, ours, our galaxy. Well, 2 trillion galaxies, should teach us a little humility. We're not the whole thing, after all. 2 trillion galaxies, each with hundreds of billions of stars. A star is being born every 15 seconds. And our star, the sun, holds 1 million Earths. A star is not a tiny thing, and one is being born every 15 seconds. Hey, how can you be bored ever again? We're part of this universe, and it's blessed us to bring us here, that we can be talking about it, that we can think about it, that we can send these instruments like Webb telescope out there and learn every day more about it. What a moment to be living in. Yes, we are at the edge of our existence as a species. We are. The path we are on, the path of the reptilian brain, the path of pseudo-masculinity, I win, you lose, which is the reptilian brain, dominating instead of the mammal brain, which is our compassionate brain, which is what all religions are trying to teach us we have. And that is our imitation of God, not beating up on each other, but learning interdependence and compassion and putting it into our politics and education and religion and economics, and doing it fast because we're running out of time, duh, and water, duh, and soil, duh. Our species, for all its brilliance, is the dumbest species on earth. That's why Thomas Merton could say every non-two-legged creature is a saint. Why can he say that? What's he talking about? Is this man crazy? Why does he say that every whale is a saint? And every dog is a saint, and every tree is a saint? Is he crazy? Because every creature except humans are doing what they were here to do. Whales are being whales, and bears are being bears, and trees are being trees, and lions are being lions, and we humans are messing everything up. We have so many choices. We're too smart for our britches. And this is why we have needed religious teachers always to try to get us back on the path. Rabbi Heschel says, sin is a refusal to become who we are. It's humanity's refusal to be human, to be humane, to be caring, to be compassionate. That's the heart of who we are. This is what the Buddha was trying to teach. It's what Muhammad was trying to teach. It is what the prophets were trying to teach, Isaiah and others. It is what Jesus was trying to teach. It is what White Buffalo Woman was trying to teach, and Black Elk, and indigenous peoples. When we're at our best, we are being compassionate. We are in love with life, in love with one another, and of course in love with Mother Earth, who is our mother, and is currently being crucified by human forces, including, as Pope Francis points out, economic forces. and corporate forces, powerful forces that have blinders on and have eyes only for profit and not for the survival of the planet, survival of species, survival of our species 7 generations from today. So Pope Francis goes through each of those 4 paths. He talks about the via negativa, the degradation and the suffering of mother. And he calls for creativity. He uses the word creativity 16 times in that encyclical. He calls for our creativity to come forward and for us to develop economic systems that work for everybody, and not just for every human body, but for every being on the earth. And we are capable of that. We are that intelligent. We are that capable that we can create economic systems that allow all of us to thrive. But we have to heed what Gandhi said, there's enough for everyone's need, not for everyone's greed. So we have to beware of that shadow side. And that is part of religion's task too. So we have a new creation story from science. And it is startling and it fills us with awe and wonder. In fact, Rabbi Heschel has a beautiful passage in my book here. Very, I happened to, oh, here it is. Beautiful passage. He says, this is Rabbi Heschel, he says, that that creation is so amazing that it overwhelms us. Why? How is it that we're here? It is such a surprise that it's uh, it's just to be is a blessing, just to live is holy, and that we can be overcome by the very grandeur of being here. Here's what he says: the world is not just here; it shocks us into amazement. It shocks us into amazement. Well, this is what science is doing for us today. So I say these 2 things: awe, shocking us into amazement, and we do need to be shocked into amazement, and interdependence, which links up directly with justice and compassion. These are the 2 biggest gifts of our time from science. And this is where science and spirituality absolutely link up. Once a human heart is shocked into amazement, and Heschel talks about radical amazement, then our hearts are open. Then we're willing to listen to one another's beauty and one another's pain, and to do something about it. There is an amazing theologian in the 15th century, right at the cusp of the 16th century Renaissance, Nicholas of Cusa. He was a scientist, mathematician, and, believe it or not, a cardinal in the Catholic Church. But what was unique about him was his job as a cardinal was in Greece. And of course, Greece is 90% Greek Orthodox, not Roman Catholic. So he learned some humility. When you're in a culture that is not basically one of your religion, you learn a little humility. You listen, you learn to listen. And Nicholas of Cusa, who was an amazing scientist and mystic, he said this, and I think he's speaking to today, to our time. Pardon me now, I gotta find this here. There it is. Humanity will find that it is not a diversity of creeds, but the very same creed which is everywhere proposed. There cannot but be one wisdom. Humans must therefore all agree that there is but one most simple wisdom, whose power is infinite. And everyone, in explaining the intensity of this beauty, notice, his synonym for wisdom is beauty. Everyone, in explaining the intensity of this beauty, the via positiva, must discover that it is a supreme and terrible beauty. Now, this is from a scientist, a mystic, and even a cardinal of the Catholic Church. Not all cardinals are this enlightened, I can assure you. But this one was, and he saw the vision of what's possible today, what I call deep ecumenism, interfaith, what GMU is all about, what's happening at this very moment in this classroom with us. And part of the ecumenism is science. Ecumenism is not just religions coming together today. It is also science. Science must become part of the wisdom of our time. Science is not always right. Scientists know that. That's why there's trial and error, and that's why things change in science. Thank God. The mechanistic era of science of the 19th century did horrible things, telling us the universe was a machine. Horrible thing. To me, that is where masculinity went crazy, because they killed Father Sky. They told us that Father Sky is not alive. It's the cold machine parts out there. So learn to obey, get in line and obey the machine. That was a lesson from bad science. But today's science has woken up and in many ways is leading us, not only because of technological prowess and creativity, the via creativa, but again, for the reasons I've given, because it's brought awe back and the wonders and the magnificence, the grandeur, the splendor of creation, the universe itself, and our studies of the tiniest parts of the universe, individual creatures, and of course, matter itself, which, interesting enough, is linking up with mystical teaching about the importance of light. David Bohm, the physicist, said, matter is frozen light. Others will say matter is very, very slow-moving light, but whatever. Linking light to matter destroys the dualism that has dominated so much religion in the past. Spirit versus matter. That's dead now. That's bad science, and it's terrible theology. No one has addressed that better than my mentor, Père Chenou, where I studied with in Paris at the Institut Catholique. Brilliant human being, a brilliant man. He suffered a lot. He was silenced by the Pope and all that, but he hung in there. And really, the Second Vatican Council was inspired by his work. But he wrote this. He said, the history of nature is not just a minor event in the theater of a spiritual history. The history of nature is not just a minor event in the theater of a spiritual history. The nature and spirit go together. And this is what Aquinas taught, and this is where Aquinas was so revolutionary and controversial in his day. He was condemned 3 times by 3 bishops after he died, because he insisted, going with the best science of the Middle Ages, Aristotle. He broke with Plato, because Plato split spirit from matter. For example, St. Augustine, Father Augustine, who'll be happy to know this, he probably already knows it. St. Augustine said, because he was Neoplatonist, spirit is whatever is not matter, unquote. That's dualism, folks. Aquinas said, no. Spirit is the elan and the vitality in everything. Well, that's today's physics. The energy, E equals mc squared, the energy in matter, the light in matter. So today, we know that a lot of light is not matter. In fact, it's rare to have light incarnated in our bodies, in the bodies that we see around us, the trees and everything else. That's kind of rare in the universe. It's 1 in a billion. There's more matter that is, there's more light that is not matter, billion times more light that is not matter than light that is in matter. So this too is part of certainly part of the Christian story, but other traditions too celebrate light as being a synonym for the divine. In fact, I have found that to be the most common name for divinity in the whole world. All traditions is light. And of course, in Christianity, we have the Christ saying, I am the light of the world, and you too are to be light. And the Buddha says, be a light unto yourself, etc. The theme of light is ancient. Of course, in Genesis 1, light is the first act of creation. Let there be light. And Christ is then the incarnation of this light. But all religions, if you look at them, and in my book, One River, Many Wells, one of the chapters is on light, you find this everywhere. And so this is another gift from today's science. It destroys that dualism of spirit versus matter. In my book on evil, the major book on evil, I've written 3 books on evil, but one really big one called Sins of the Spirit, Blessings of the Flesh, Transforming Evil in Soul and Society. I take today's science, and I have 3 chapters at the beginning on flesh, the universe flesh, the earth flesh, the flesh of Mother Earth, and human flesh, our bodies. And I show what a gift today's science is because it's bringing back the glory and the sacredness of flesh. If you live in a world that is dualistic, you're not recognizing this supreme and terrible beauty that Nicholas de Cusa talked about, that is present in all beings and in all flesh, therefore, all matter. And this is how Chenu talks about it too, that the sacredness of matter is something we have to recover, because in so many traditions it's been lost. And he connects it directly to our capacity for the via creativa, to co-creation. Our work is bringing back the sacred into our work worlds, whether it's growing food or doing carpentry or the work of raising children and educating and teaching. All our work that is good work is incarnational. Matter is involved, and all art is incarnational and fleshy and bodily. And so this word incarnation is really an invitation to all of us to recover the sacredness. Christians just kind of, we have this theological dogma about called incarnation. But the word means take on flesh. Divinity took on flesh, took on time, took on the suffering that we all go through in our time, in our times. That's the basic message of the Christian story, and is not contradicted in other religious stories either. And I want to emphasize, we have this new creation story from science, and what that means is we can all draw from it, of whatever religion. Atheists too can draw from it. And that's so important that a people, a species, has one common creation story. Now, you don't have to throw out your religious creation stories. You don't have to throw Genesis 1 out the door. It has its own wisdom. And that's true of all our traditions. An example, this is one I enjoy. It's a brief one. This is the Apache people, native people in Southwest United States. Here's one of their creation stories. That first God created the dog, and the dog was lonely. So then God created people. Now you can say, well, that's not scientifically accurate. Humans are 300,000 years old, and the dog is only evolved about 40,000 years ago. Well, that's not the point of a creation story, to be scientifically accurate. There's a hell of a lesson there for all of us to imbibe, isn't there? About humility. Humans are here to befriend the dog. So every creation story contains this wisdom. So you don't have to throw out any of the creation stories from your tradition or from new stories you hear from indigenous people or other religions different from yours. Look for the wisdom in it. Look for what it's trying to say. They're not all trying to say what science can say, that, these are the years of and the stages of the universe. Fine. Science brings its own wisdom to the table, and that's my point. That science is an integral part of deep ecumenism, of interfaith today. And it's not always right, and scientists know that. Otherwise, they wouldn't be continuing to do experiments and criticizing one another intellectually and in journals and all that. They're smart enough to know that they're not always right. They're not humble enough always to admit that they've made mistakes, like I just confessed that science made a big mistake in the 19th century and 18th century. Talking exclusively about a mechanistic universe, because that shut down the male soul especially. So that we have this crazy maleness today still running the world, the reptilian brain. I win, you lose. Because Father Sky was dismantled and abused. In my book on the hidden spirituality of man, my first chapter, I have 10 archetypes or metaphors for recovering the healthy masculinity. The green man, the blue man, the spiritual warrior, the hunter-gatherer, fatherhood, grandfatherhood, the elder. But the first chapter is on Father Sky, because that is what we were robbed of by bad science in the mechanistic worldview, when men had to hunker down and obey. And it fit the Industrial Revolution just fine. It fit the mining revolution just fine, but it broke the male soul. And it turned us into, what the reptilian brain that is visible today in our wars and everything else around the world, that we put our human intelligence, science, and technology to the work of killing each other more efficiently and the earth. We can tear down a rainforest in a day today that has taken God and nature 10,000 years to birth. In one day, we can do it with a good bulldozer. So there's a shadow side, of course, to science, to everything humans do, to religion too. We have to remain critical in all of our professions. That's part of the human genius, really, that we can criticize one another and criticize ourselves and confess our mistakes and learn to let go and start over. Redemption, therefore, to begin anew. But it takes a humility, the admission that there is such a thing as truth and falsity. So
Matthew, should we
I want to
have a
close now. I
time for
think my time is
questions?
up. Yeah, I'll close now. Let me just close with a statement from Teilhard de Chardin, the scientist and mystic and Jesuit priest who brought back the archetype of the cosmic Christ in the early 20th century. It's an archetype actually that is alive and well in the earliest writings in the Christian Bible, in the letter to Colossians, for example, and Ephesians. Here's Teilhard de Chardin. Because it is not sufficiently moved by a truly human compassion, because it is not exalted by a sufficiently passionate admiration of the universe, our religion is becoming enfeebled. That was, he died in 1955. So he wrote that before 1955. you put it positively, that when humanity recovers its powers of compassion and its passionate admiration of the universe, religion will contribute to exalting our species, and we will be a species that our ancestors can be proud of. Thank you. I look forward to our conversation.
Thank you very much, Reverend Fox. Father Augustine, do you want to monitor the questions now?
You're muted, Father Augustine.
You're muted, Father Augustine.
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Fox, for that exciting and enriching presentation. This has been very engaging. Already we have some 9 questions in the chat box. For your understanding, I have just copied them all together. Maybe you can also see that, Professor, on my screen here. First question I will read out to you. Your attention had been with the doctrine of original sin. In the light of that, how do you uphold the idea of original blessing in the context of evil and suffering? Is there any theological scope for original sin in creation spirituality as understood in the Catholic tradition?
Okay. What I'm saying, in fact, in my book, Original Blessing, I do not deny original sin. What I point out is that, first of all, it's never been defined. So that's a very dangerous thing, because it leaves everyone wondering, maybe my original sin is that I'm female. Maybe my original sin is that I'm gay. Maybe my original sin is that I'm a person of color, or that I'm white, etc., etc. So it's a very dangerous thing to leave something that big just hanging out there undefined. I actually offer a definition in my book, and that is dualism, what I was talking about earlier. That dualism and our capacity for dualism is an original sin, because once you start separating matter from spirit, you're no longer in creation anymore. You don't see creation as sacred. Now, my number one of several arguments with original sin as being the beginning of teaching about religion. First of all, Jesus never heard of it. No Jews ever heard of original sin. It's not in the Bible. Any biblical scholar worth their salt will tell you that. And any Jew. That's when I first learned this. When I was teaching, the first year I taught in undergraduate college back in 73 or so, 1973, there was a Jewish woman in my class, and it was a Catholic college. And after class, when she came up to me, she said, "What's this thing the students are talking about, original sin? I've never heard about it." I said, "What? You have the story of Genesis in the Bible?" No, I've never heard a Jew talk, never heard a rabbi talk about what is it? Well, that's when I learned. Jews, and Jesus was a Jew, folks. Original sin comes from Augustine, the 4th century. Never used as a word before then. It's his concept. And what else happened in the 4th century? The church took over the empire in the 4th century. So it was very convenient. If you're going to run an empire, original sin is a great idea. It gets everybody worried and looking at themselves, and they don't get around to building community. They'll join the army right away to kill other people in Christ's name. So it's bad theology because it's not biblical. So Jesus never heard of. How can you start a religion in Jesus' name based on original sin? And but original blessing is Jewish. That's Genesis 1. Read it. Good. This is good. This is good. Blessing means good. Furthermore, I found after my book came out and was condemned by Cardinal Ratzinger, I found that Thomas Aquinas, a saint and doctor of the church, 13th century, writes about original goodness numerous times. And he also talks about original freshness. And Hildegard of Bingen, who now is a canonized saint and doctor of the church, she not only writes about original wisdom, but she draws pictures of it, our original wisdom. So what original blessing is absolutely theologically correct. Now, the thing about original sin is so anthropocentric. And that's what the question's about. What about human sin? Okay, I'll get on that in a minute. But the point is that the universe doesn't begin with us. Check out Genesis 1. We're late there. This wisdom passage that I shared with you, remember we went through the seasons and the courses of the planets and everything else before we got to humans, remember? Well, of course, today's creation story. It took 13.8 billion years for us to show up with our sins. So, to me, original sin is very dangerous. It's bad theology. It distorts the Bible. And it's not what Jesus thought. It's not his consciousness at all. So it puts us in a very bad place. It's bad psychology because it makes you doubt yourself. Elie Wiesel, the great Jewish writer who was, as a child in the concentration camp, he says, not only is original sin not in the Bible, it is foreign, alien to Jewish thinking. Alien to Jewish thinking. So everything I've been talking about, the via positiva and creation's goodness, is original blessing. And if we weren't so anthropocentric, like I'm sorry, Cardinal Ratzinger was, we wouldn't overreact to the concept of original blessing. Because it's blessing that brought us here, folks, and a lot of fine-tuning of the universe. I mean, science tells us, this is my understanding, I heard this from Brian Swim years ago, but it blew my mind, that if in the first 700,000 years of the universe, the expansion had been slower or faster by 1 second, and if the temperature had been 1 degree warmer or colder, we wouldn't be here today. By we, I mean the Earth and us. And, I think that's pretty important information. And if that's not a blessing, I don't know what is. So,
Professor
about
Fox,
evil and suffering, as I say, I've written 3 books on evil. So, of course, I'm not forgetting evil. But evil is the misuse of our goodness. Aquinas defines sin as misdirected love. And the Jewish word for sin is an archery term, missing the bullseye. Missing the bullseye. Well, Aquinas is right on target there. That even our sins are efforts to do something for ourselves anyway. You steal money, you say, you got to help my children, I'm poor, or something like that. And, we make up our reasons for our sins. But, of course, we're capable of great evil. Aquinas says one human being can do more evil than all the other species put together, because the other species aren't doing evil. But we're with our intelligence. Now, he said that 800 years before Hitler or Stalin or Pol Pot or whoever you want to name who's done a lot of evil. How did he know that in the 13th century? He treasured our intellect and our creativity. He knew how powerful we are as a species. And so as a species, we are destroying this planet because we are powerful. And that's the whole point about the via transformativa and via creativa, to steer that power of intellect and creativity into the common good and future generations thriving, therefore into love and compassion and justice, and not into aggrandizement and greed. So evil, one thing I do in my evil book is I take the 7 chakras of the East, of Hinduism, compared to the 7 capital sins of the West. Because if sin is a misdirected love, and a chakra names kind of our 7 love centers in our bodies and psyches, then an off-center chakra might correspond to a capital sin in the Western tradition, and it works. It does. It's a new language we're talking about evil. It comes from ecumenism, because I'm listening to the East, and I'm bringing it together with the West. And it really helps. So I don't have time to go into that, but it really works that the chakras off-center correspond to the capital sins of the West, of envy and violence and so forth.
Thank you, Professor Fox, for the detailed response to the question on original sin. Something you already referred to the next question on the screen. Recently, Richard Dawkins remarked that if he were ever to be convinced of God's existence, it would be through the argument from fine-tuning. What is your perspective on the idea of cosmic fine-tuning in creation spirituality?
Well, I think I just gave an example of fine tuning
Yeah.
regarding the temperature and the speed going on in the original, the original creation. So that's just one example, but I do think that fine tuning is an important scientific concept that applies to the presence of what I would call an all-loving mind. Forgetting right now who wrote the self-organizing universe, getting his name right now, the physicist who wrote that, who worked here in Berkeley. But near the end of his book on self-organizing universe, he says that what I'm talking about, mystics have talked about for centuries. God is the mind of the universe, he said. And this includes, I think, fine tuning. But he said, now that a scientist is talking about it, a lot more people are going to pay attention because, in Western world today, people listen more to scientists than to theologians. But I apologize, can't remember his name right now, but this was a major scientist. That book is a major book on the self-organizing universe. And so I think that fine-tuning is a very important concept. And when you think about it, it's true of all artists. All artists want to fine-tune their work, if you will, and make it as special and beautiful as they can. And I think that you might even be able to say that the Jesus story is meant to be kind of a fine-tuning of humanity. God was so frustrated with humanity, said, "Oh, I better send someone to show them the way, and kind of fine-tune things a little." But maybe that could be said of the Buddha too, and of Lao Tzu, and all the other incarnations or avatars, those who have visited us and gifted us to wake us up, including people in our own time. Martin Luther King was a fine-tuning, I think, of the promises of the Constitution of the United States that were radically being disobeyed and so forth. Gandhi was a fine-tuning instrument. All prophets maybe are fine-tuning instruments.
Next question from Christopher. How can compassion be reawakened as a universal spiritual principle that transcends religious ideologies, political boundaries, and economic systems? How can we reawakening compassion in our context today?
Well, pardon me. There's a saying, that necessity is the mother of invention. And to the extent that we can get over our denial, you see that one reason there's a lot of denial, at least in my country today, is because the media, pardon me, 82% of American media, include all the media, including social media, are owned by billionaires who have a right-wing ideology. Not all billionaires have right-wing ideologies, but it doesn't take a lot of billionaires, because billionaires can buy up all kinds of stations and do all kinds of media stuff and tell their lies everywhere. So I think the media is a big part of the problem, that untruths. Humanity cannot survive without an effort at truth, an effort. I'm not saying we're ever full of truth or No one is always right, and no profession is always right, etc. And no political party is always right, etc. And but nevertheless, we have to have a commitment that truth matters. And Thomas Jefferson said that there's no democracy without educated people. And by educated people, he meant people who are getting decent information. And we have a out of control capitalism today in our country that anyone who's super rich can buy up radio stations, buy up social media, and all this, and put their philosophy, even if it's foolish or contrary or stupid and full of lies, out there. And so a lot of people get bamboozled by this. And this is where parenting and friendship, citizenship, and those who can speak out need to speak out, and especially ordinary people, because the truth has to come from the ground. We cannot trust the owners who are owning the airwaves, or thinking they do because they get away with it. So that's a big part of it. It's about truth. And of course, truth and compassion go together. And truth and justice go together. This is where science, again, is so helpful. When it's doing its job, it's offering the facts of things. You can weigh things. That's one reason justice is pictured with a scale, that you can get us the facts about hurricanes and so forth, the facts about global warming, the facts about fossil fuels. But if fossil fuel companies own the airwaves and so forth, you're going to get distorted information. And if they own politicians, and these people are not dumb, they know how to buy politicians. And this is why you need politicians who have a sense of truth, who have a sense of integrity. And so it's at every level, education too. I mean, I have been criticizing Western education for 45 years, and not just complaining, but doing something about it. I've created schools that consciously bring in the right hemisphere, if you will, or the intuitive brain, along with the rational brain. Albert Einstein said, quote, "I abhor American education," unquote, even though he was living on Princeton campus when he said that. But why did Albert Einstein, who was a pretty smart guy, abhor American education? Because he said, we've been given two gifts, the gift of the rational brain and the gift of the intuitive brain. For me, the intuitive brain, I would call the mystical brain. But in any case, and he said, the rational brain should serve the intuitive brain because that is where values are. Values are in the intuitive brain. Einstein cared about values. He was a good Jew in that regard. But he said, we live in a culture that honors the rational brain and ignores the intuitive brain. So all of my pedagogy, my structured way to learn, for over 45 years has been to bring in a balance, to bring the intuitive brain in through art as meditation. Because in art, you are exercising the intuitive brain. And that is a pathway of mysticism. M.C. Richards has said that, Hildegard of Bingen said, there's wisdom in all creative works. Wisdom in all creative works. So that's how you bring wisdom into education. And so all our education needs of values. Obviously, we're not teaching values in American education because we're getting lawyers who don't have an ounce of integrity about a lot of things. And they link up with politicians who have no ounce of integrity, and of course with the media who are eager to sell the wares of fossil fuel companies and others who are pretending to be in denial about climate change. So, it's the big picture. You got to see how everything in this network interacts. The interdependence happens with evil as well as with good. So don't fool ourselves. You got to get smart and critical and stay close to where the suffering is and to the people who are closest to where the brokenness is.
Okay. Next question from Ellie Johnson, just out of curiosity, is asking whether Reverend Fox has watched Our Living World on Netflix, which is a wonderful nature documentary that is all about the interconnectedness.
Well, I'm
Just
glad
short
to know
response
there's a
to
good,
the
I'm
Yeah.
glad to know there's a good documentary out there like that. Good. Thanks for
Very good. Thank you.
advertising it.
The next is also Ellie Johnson is only introducing a poem that is there on the screen. You can see that. Next question from Martin. Einstein did not believe in a personal God, but only in a sort of cosmic mysticism. Does creation spirituality require a personal God?
Well, I tell my students that mysticism, you can take apart the mystical experience. Thanks to a French philosopher who died not long ago, Gaston Bachelard, who wrote a brilliant book. He wrote a lot of good books, but he wrote this one brilliant book. In fact, I have it right here, called The Poetics of Space. I highly recommend it. He was a scientist. The first half of his life, he was a scientist, a French scientist, very well respected. Then he turned to what I would call mysticism. He called it art and so forth. But in it, he has the genius to take apart mysticism with what I call the three I's. A mystical experience. In a mystical experience, you experience immensity, intensity, and intimacy. Think about it. Think of all your mystical experiences. Just think of one. Was it intense? Was it immense? Was it intimate? I just respect Gaston Bachelard, who again, I repeat, because of the nature of this class, he was a first-class scientist before he turned to aesthetics and art and spirituality and mysticism. So you should carry special weight with you. And so notice that intimacy is part of the Creator's relationship to us. Because what's more intimate than the air we breathe? I mean, really. And, you know, after 30 minutes in a room with someone else, even in a large room, you're breathing one another's air, one another's water vapor. That's pretty intimate, isn't it? So this stuff is going on all the time. And of course, as I alluded to earlier, the very word breath means spirit. Spirit is another name for God. And so, yes, God is intimate. And yes, God is cosmic. Now, I know the question's about personal. But I want to answer that in terms of the word intimacy, and that's why I've answered it the way I have. And sometimes I think we have to move beyond certain words because they're overly familiar, they carry too much baggage with them or something. Even the word God carries baggage for a lot of people. Meister Eckhart says, I pray God to rid me of God. Now, that's a pretty radical statement by a Christian preacher and priest and mystic, but it makes a lot of sense. If you grew up with a God that was all male, if you grew up with a God that was vengeful and full of anger and patriarchal, I think you want to be rid of that God. You want to pray God to rid you of that God. You want to bring in the divine, the feminine elements to your understanding of divinity, and compassion is one of them. That's why compassion has been banished so regularly in religion. Compassion in Hebrew and Arabic comes with the word for womb. So obviously it's announcing the feminine side of God, that divinity, as the prophet Isaiah said, is like a mother. So we have to let go of some words. I'm just inviting the questioner to move from the word personal to the word intimate, and then ask yourself the question vis-a-vis your own experiences of the divine. I don't know how it's possible, you see, is what I'm saying, to experience real beauty that isn't intimate. The kind that Nicholas of Cusa talked about, the supreme and terrible beauty that we all, and from all religions and non-atheists, experience beauty too. And a lot of atheists I know are frankly more spiritual than a lot of practicing religious people I know. So don't leave atheists out of deep ecumenism. Not all of them, but a lot of them are soul searching and are on their own journey and know it. Some of them are on their journey and don't know it. But because the word God has been abused and used to beat people up with. In America, we put in God we trust on every coin and every dollar bill, and I think every MX missile. And there's poor God has been dragged into the human agendas enough. And that's why Eckhart, way back in the 14th century, prayed, "I pray God to rid me of God." And there are many more names for God. I wrote a book recently called 89 Useful and Beautiful Names for God. Well, it's actually called Naming the Unnameable. The subtitle is 89. And of course, I give credit in my introduction to the Sufi Muslim tradition of the 99 most beautiful names for God. But hey, and as I point out, this is just 89. There are a lot more out there. And the Muslims have 99. There are a lot more out there. Thomas Aquinas said, every being is a name for God. Oh my God. That means there are trillions of names for God. But then he said, and no being is a name for God. So that's the both and. That's the via positiva and the via negativa. The cataphatic God and the apophatic God. The God without a name will never be given a name. So open yourself up to mystery again, the mystery side of God, who is without a name. At the same time that you have every right to do what I did and come up with your list of names for God. But take a look at mine. A lot of them are from science, from today's science, including that phrase, the mind of God, from that one scientist, consciousness, and other names. So I blend science into that book very much. And it's a short book. But I think that's part of our journey today, is to let God be God and thereby allow other names and other images, other archetypes to flood ourselves, to wake us up.
Thank you. Father Fox and Professor Jerry, our scheduled time we have already crossed. Do we conclude here or extend for a few minutes more? We have a number
We'll
of
go a few
questions.
minutes more.
Say that again, Professor.
He says we can go a few more minutes. It's fine with me.
Oh, okay, fine. You are fine now, Professor Fox. I hope your sound is sound enough to respond. Okay, fine. Let us say next question from Alfred. Thomas Berry, in the sacred universe and the Christian future and fate of the earth, hugely alludes to the need for dialogue of traditions as a way of getting back the discovery of the sense of the divine. This makes a huge lot of sense. However, in a world that is captured in technological Prometheanism, that is ensconced on systems approach to self-understanding, how would one harness dialogue so that via creativa could transit itself to via transformative?
Well, that's an interesting question. How to steer a dialogue from the via creativa to via transformativa? Well, I think a lot of dialogue does run on what questions we ask one another, And so maybe to begin a circle of dialogue, if you will, with questions that do move us from creativa to transformativa. And it is true that the transformativa brings in values, just what we're referring to regarding Einstein. What are our common values today? What do we want to see happen for the sake of our survival as a species, and of course the survival of Mother Earth, all of which is interconnected, the survival of all the other species. So begin at the end, you might say. Begin with that question, and then how do we steer our creativity? For me, one of the biggest questions to address, of course, is how can we steer our passion for war and the amount of energy and talent and money we put into that? How can we steer that into the direction of saving Mother Earth? I mean, I give a lot of credit. I think a lot of countries today, including China, are really putting a lot of effort into alternative energy. And of course, a lot of it can be critiqued, but on a regular basis, you see these amazing findings. I mean, just the other day, I was sharing with someone this story about a small island. A country of 40,000 people have come up with this whole new way of getting ocean energy by going deep and pulling it up, and it's all clean, and it runs 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 30 days a month, 365 days a year. I mean, the potential. See, human imagination cannot be undervalued. It's just amazing what we can come up with when we realize, hey, there's a problem, a real problem. Let's do something. So that's why I don't wipe off our species, even though the odds are that we're going extinct. The odds are that we're going to go extinct rather rapidly, just like all of our cousins did, Neanderthal and Denisons and all the others, new ones that we're discovering on a regular basis. That's the path we're on. But I think that the single biggest problem is war. If we could maybe help that reptilian brain a little and say, hey, and borrow their language, instead of making war against other humans, why don't we make war against planet destruction? I mean, if we have to borrow the word war, okay, to get countries involved. But I mean, that would be huge if we could shift. Just take an oath for 10 years, no war and no preparing for war, no more war stuff, and really envision the struggle to survive as a war, although I don't, as a battle, as a struggle that we all could get on board with, and forget the difference of ideologies and all the rest. Just let's get together. And that's my point, really. That's how I started out the way I did, that this crisis we face, and it is a crisis of extinction. Now, let's not cover that up. Let's not pretend it's not true. It is about extinction. And of course, this is what is motivating a lot of these billionaires, frankly, are wanting to put their money into going to another planet, to Mars, or building this perfectly indestructible house underground or something. It's really crazy when you hear what some of these people are doing and the money they're putting in. And it doesn't make any sense, because human beings have to procreate above ground and do other things above ground. But it just shows that, people are afraid and there's angst. Well, let's steer that. So anyway, I think the answer to your question is, what questions are we asking? And I think it doesn't hurt to begin at the end. What does it take not to go extinct? And then back up and say, let's talk about those things. Draw me pictures of what could prevent our extinction. Why are we going extinct? What paths are we on that are irretrievable and mortal sin path? Because they're mortal sin because they're deadly.
Okay, Professor. Next question from Ines. Kindly comment on spirit and matter is already a dead theology. Does this border monism?
No, quite the opposite. In Aristotelian philosophy, matter is the principle of individuation. So it's about plurality. And so spirit takes on all these amazing expressions of matter. Just last night, I was seeing a film on the Philippines, and there's a creature there that is unique to the Philippines. It's a mammal, and it had amazing big eyes, but the eyes don't move, but the head moves 180 degrees. So it sees very well, but it has to move its head to see. It can't see things around because the eyes don't move. So it is amazing, a cute little animal I'd never seen before. And a friend of mine who was Filipino was with me. He had never seen it before. So the point is that spirit takes on individuality and diversity. That's the whole point. It is those traditions that separate spirit and matter, I think, that are afraid of diversity. And the truth is that obviously nature is biased in favor of diversity. And it's come up with beings and creatures that we've never imagined. And God knows what we may find in another generation on other planets and other places of the universe. That's terribly interesting. But no, I don't think this is monism. I think it's diversity with unity and unity with diversity.
Okay, from Margie, because of the political arena today is an actively encouraging separation and polarization, so it affects our efforts to bring science and religion together in service of common good. Being it is working and dividing us, how can we safely speak across political divides so that people of all faiths will see climate care as sacred, non-partisan responsibility?
Well, that, of course, is a very good question. And I'm not sure that the word safely is possible. When Jesus came to teach compassion, it wasn't safe, was it? It got him in a lot of trouble. And the same is true of his early followers who ended up being thrown to lions and so forth. And so speaking truth and speaking light does not always invite friendliness in return. And this is because, we all carry our inherited wounds and with us, and if we haven't paid attention to them and tried to heal them and put them in light, into the light, we're often run by them. They run us. So the point is then, I would take the word safely out. To me, the prophets were not safe, and we have too many examples in our own lifetime of people from Gandhi to King and others who were murdered, or Mandela put in prison for 20 some years because they were speaking truth. So I don't think you should look for safety. I remember what Martin Luther King was asked one day. He was asked, how can you walk through Skokie, a suburb of Chicago, knowing that people want to kill you? And the answer was, you have to love something more than the fear of death if you're going to live. And so courage is what's needed, not safety. Courage, cur large, a big heart. You have to really, that's very positive again. You have to really be in love with life, with existence, with our species, with the rest of creation, to fight for it, to speak the truth. And you have to find allies and community where you do feel support and honest but affirmative criticism, because none of us is right all the time. And so, it's this building of allies. That's what politics is, I think, for the common good. And, try to retain your humaneness toward those who disagree with you, etc. But it's not safe out there. And, that's why a lot of people, and even legal companies and universities, are are yielding to false ideologies rather than have the courage to stand up. I think courage is the first sign of the Spirit. I do. Without courage, I don't think you can get anywhere. So I would ask, it's a wonderful question, but I would propose that you leave out the word safely, because there's no guarantee. The truth does not guarantee that. And especially at a time like this, when so many of our institutions are on the ropes and we have to reinvent so much. But the question is a really good one. How do we speak compassion in a time as difficult as ours? Well, you keep speaking. And Jesus did it with art. He did it with parables, which are stories, brief stories, and that awaken people, kind of shocking people. And again, this is where I think the shock that Heschel talks about, the shock that awe is part of what science is delivering today with these amazing stories and pictures of the universe. It's an invitation to gather us together, and in the context of the whole universe, why couldn't inhabitants of Earth get together to try to save Earth? It's so special, it's so unique, and to me, that's where the argument should be played out the most, and that's why creation is so at the center of our survival today. And creation theology.
2 more questions, Father Augustine, maybe 2 more questions.
Yeah, we have only 2 questions left. Professor, from Ansu, is universe that science tells us is expanding, in a universe that is expanding, impersonal, governed by chaotic forces. How do we speak of God's mercy and interdependence in the language of modern cosmology? Is your cosmic Christ, is it compassion embedded in the universe itself, or is it uniquely a human spiritual awakening?
Well, yes, the universe is both impersonal and personal. It's both immense and intense and intimate. So it's really a both and. And I do think that, of course, this is the work of community, and it's the work of healthy religion. And I think a healthy understanding of God, that things seem very impersonal at times, and yet beneath it all is the intimacy, is the personal. So it's a both and. Now, as far as the cosmic Christ goes, the cosmic Christ is understood to be present in the whole cosmos, the cosmos as a whole, the doxa and the glory that is the whole earth and the whole world, the whole universe, but also is present in the individual. And indeed, that we're being called to be other Christs or other Buddhas or other images of God, as the Jewish Christian puts it, Shalem. And that's the responsibility. And of course, remember, going back to that previous question, the cosmic Christ has wounds. That's part of the impact of the crucifixion. The cosmic Christ is not just light, but is also the wounds of the earth and the wounds of all of us. And so we're all light and we're all wounded. And that too binds us and is something personal. Suffering is something that brings us together. That's part of compassion interdependence, isn't it? That we operate out of our own experience of suffering and one another's. And that's how we understand one another at a deep level, because we've been through that via negative experience. We talk about the wounded healer, for example. That's part of the prophetic vocation, I think, is to be in touch with one's own wounds. And then you can better listen to and understand the wounds of others. That's all part of the picture. And the wounding And the suffering in life is a grounding. It keeps us real. And it teaches us day in and day out that we're not in charge. We don't have all the answers. We're not holding all the cards. But this is why we need allies. We need community. We're more effective together, of course, a circle, and rather than rugged individuals. So in the circle of our ancestors, those who've gone before, and those who are coming in the future. So that whole communion of saints is part of what sustains us. And we can call on them too. And don't leave out the angels either. There are visible and invisible beings in the universe. And we can call on the help from the invisible beings as well.
Yeah, Professor, the last two questions we will take.
Yantz, yes, so glad. Thank you, Galen, for bringing that name forward. Thank you, Eric Yantz. Yes, he's the author of Self-Organizing Universe book, which is a very important concept.
Also, from Michael, what is the name of the scientist who became interested in art and aesthetics?
Right. His name is Gaston, Gaston Bachelard, Bachelard. And the book, he wrote a number of books, but the book I'm really recommending is called The Poetics of Space. I remember it was recommended to me by my cosmologist friend, Brian Swim, who's a physicist, astrophysicist. And it's one of the favorite books of my life. It's stunningly beautiful and truthful. And as I say, he's a scientist, but he's operating in this book at the level of archetypes, and but he takes the archetype of a house, and each chapter is like there's a chapter on door, a chapter on window, and a chapter on threshold, and he's just so poetic in his bringing insight through in a marvelous way, and he brings in science as well. But I can't tell you, this book is a trip. It's a spiritual trip. And it's a trip, and I don't think you'll be the same after you read it. I've been sharing it with the group now that I'm teaching about a course on Christianity 2.0, about reinventing religion. And this guy helps so much because it's hard to talk about mysticism. William James says that one of the marks of mysticism is it's ineffable. You stutter and you stammer, as Eckhart says, when you experience God. But so that's why I tell my students there are only two ways to talk about a mystical experience. One is silence, and the other is art. So you put your mystical experience into music, into dance, into chant, into color, into film, all kinds of art ways. And that's how I teach, as I said earlier, the spirituality. The art is meditation. That's part of the art. That's how you engage the right hemisphere of the brain. And that's where you get to values, but you also get to joy and laughter and play. All art is about play. And that's what Jesus was talking about. Become like a child if you're going to receive the kingdom. You adults have to change and become like children. Well, that's part of the play dimension to spirituality. And so Gaston Bachelard is doing that in this book. He's not afraid to play with ideas. That's what a real intellectual does. A real intellectual is not beating people up with their ideas, trying to prove they're smarter than the next person in competition, which is ridiculous pseudo-masculinity thing, reptilian brain again. No, a true intellectual is playing with ideas and proposing that, hey, here's something that might bring us together. That's what Jesus was doing, playing. His parables are playful. They're inviting us in to participate. He's not telling us, do this and don't do that. He's saying, try this on for size. And what does this tell you? That's what real artists do. Invite us in.
Okay, thank you. Big thank you to you, Professor Fox. Professor Jerry, over to you now.
Yes, we want to thank Professor Reverend Fox for this wonderful session. We've recorded it. It'll be on GMU Classroom. And we encourage, Dennis, you want to say a word about the course that Reverend Fox teaches that he just mentioned? Is Dennis still there?
The 6-month course.
Yes, whatever you want to say about the course that is available through the Fox organization. Yes.
Matthew's teaching a 6-month course on the great Christian mystics, and we're already a month into it. You can still register, and there's some other events happening. You can go to his website at matthewfox.org and click on the events, and you can see the 6-month course and some other upcoming courses in this week, including one tomorrow that's Joanna Macy's sister organization, and other course at matthewfox.org. I'll put it in the chat right now so you can see that.
Well, thank you very much for this wonderful presentation for both our students and our guests. And we thank Reverend Fox for all of his contributions to religion and science, and we look forward to continuing our relationship with him. So thank you.
And thank you, Augustine. Good luck in your teaching too. Thank you, everybody. Good being
Thank
with
you,
you.
everybody, for joining.
Thank
Goodbye
you.
now.
Bye now.
I know.
Jerry, you could end the session now.
Yeah.